Okay, so I'm going to do the best I can inside of here to be able to talk about hand language. So hopefully I'm trying to keep it out here a little bit other than some things, but it can happen. And I don't want to necessarily talk about the parallel of hand language and how functional it is. It can be very very useful in the way that I talk about it in terms of farm hands, market hands. There's a hand in the market, and that is that the investor has a system, but it's really important to protect the business owner or the whatever it is, because it's going to be a hand of that function is a hedge fund, is a biotech company, is a technology company, is a hand in terms of what that market can represent. So some of the important things to note here is, I find the positive in any stock, whether it be Robinhood or Weebles, and hopefully you've actually seen here. You see a lot of Robinhood, but then you actually find out that other investors are still in the same game for this, but they've taken a stance on a thing. They've said, I'm okay with that market. I want to be Weebles, but I'm listening through other aspects in here. And so that would be the farm where I'm going to put some investments, some of my hands or fingers based on the total stock as it's shared. And, so that can be deliberated over a company. And as the guy in this conversation said, you can't really get over your head in the market there. And a good example of what I mean by that is sometimes on the stone mill, I have a problem. And that problem is I will work people right out of a job. If you're not necessarily performing in a thing, there's a lot of fulfillment problems. Not necessarily that there wouldn't necessarily be work on the floor, but time towards the distance of the stock can be a problem if you're not in the right operations for raises and promotions, and that can overextend yourself on a market where then the company is supposed to be set to a specific standard and timelines, pay raises, a crushinator inside of there, where it's nothing illegal with doing that. In fact, it's necessary to be able to operate the guillotine correctly. And it's to say, you're not up to par. Here's the numbers on the 45. Here's drops in performances. Obviously, I'm going to sell, or I'm going to say that this is a hold equity for what the standard is. So it gets a little bit more complicated as I perceive it in looking into the market. I would say you got splits, you got shorts and longs, and all these other things inside of here, which there's a question about, is the sunshine alive, in the way that I can't predict its movements at the same level as I predict the market. And as if you understand stuff about solar storms and 11-year cycles and populations of rabbits and things like that, you'd have to look at this and say, well, they are very mechanical, but they act in this way that I can't predict an FMA object with knuckling down to the approximation levels where because it's all dynamics at that point. It's all hydrogen but butterfly effects through stuff. In short, essentially here, I'm going to sell off that stock to people who don't understand it, or to the people who do understand it, because they're going to find it as a low point in here where I can pick up from there for somebody to have a question on that. And that would be a working aspect. That would be, this is the stock. It's a product I've made at this point in time, and I've passed it out into the market against other fields of it where they have, and I certainly could step into Fermilab, any of the telescope factories here in astrology, and kind of there the market isn't away, it's on Earth about resources and so on and so forth. Uh, Pick up accordingly if you think that's a stock that you want to buy. Um, but in here, and again, and I wanted to really specify the hand problem. It's you can't do all the work and expect somebody on the field not to do anything. And so the market has that problem, and I see a realistic nature why Robinhood would say that. And it goes to me as an inventor at this point in time to say, I got the hands. What would I invent about this scenario? How can I secure a brokerage company on a contract like Robinhood? Because if Elon's doing it with these companies, then I'd have to look at the entirety of the market and say, well, what I've done here as Robinhood is I was playing a game that I got overextended in, and what happened there is I didn't necessarily agree with those business techniques. I didn't. There's a proper model of why you say no to those kinds of stock options and systems, because in the long game, yes, you benefit from that, but there's a money marketing problem inside of there. What you're doing with it, why are you doing it with it like that? And again, this isn't just that company, and it becomes that thing later on of, well, how can you stop it and secure that? I mean, hedge fund companies, the SCC there, I think is what they were. They're very hardcore regulators, and for me on the market, it's whether you're done anything wrong or not. That's my job. This is where I go to do safety checkups and train crew inside here. Go find something in a good business. What do you mean there ain't nothing in good business? I swear if any one of them get in your way, bribe you, or do anything like that, you go free the beast on that person. And that's your market. That's your job. But I can't just wait for some aspect on the system here or say I'm looking into non-fruitful things. There's an FCC regulation. What are they doing? They weren't just standing around with a dick in their hand, were they? Waiting National Guard training, were they? They got to be on mission somewheres. I got to have a staff for those things, or on a regiment of the road bridge crew of this company this time. I had them on the hedge of the thing, and that's where I'm gonna float around into that detail. Just being bored. And so generally, I would go from here, hit the council, do whatever. Who's got resources? Certain markets act differently with different crushionators, but now that I've actually looked in there, which I shouldn't have had a problem to look in there anyways, it's just to say let's take a look at your portfolio, which a lot of them are very apt to do it. And then I could say, well, in some of these cases, this is an individual or a company. And I would look at that wave function. I'd say, well, why did it drop so much right there? Or why did it spike up so much and come back down? Because maybe you're looking at it from there, but you might be at the back end of the day, which is on the back end of the 5-year system, which are a lot harder in terms of understanding why that Washington Monument build was necessary right there. And then it becomes an easy rationalization to say, well, all the bricks are here. Well, there they are. There's a working crew, and I can see the total budget inside here. Hmm. And to say I was missing something on the ground, obviously, I would be a SCC operative or whoever in the IMA you're training to be today. It's a skill set. It's just, especially at certain operating levels, that's, we're all operators. There's a finger, a hand, of those types of nature when you're dealing with that language. And so sometimes this natural conversation comes up, but it really blends the differential with what's down on the ground. No offense, I'm not talking shit about nobody. You're my farm. You're my bowl inside of here when I try to show what psychological, engineering, economics I have. It has to be able to run the spectrum, right? And not only run the spectrum, it has to be able to hit with enough connection as it would down here and move equally on an index at least for certain types of things. What's weird about that is you can have a guy go nowheres and you can have a guy take it off, just go places that you weren't expecting on that index to do a thing. And equally, you could want to do that and have a neutrino tritium effect in 5 to 6 megatons and connect it at 15. And that's how we kind of learn that science in the same regard, but I can't really determine that wasn't true in terms of nuclear testing. You got to go back through Project Blue Book, which is a different type of index, a different type of psychology with people who have this. And in a way, you would think that this is a beneficial nature of lie detecting and something like that. And the reality of the matter is Ubers, right? They get around. Yeah. Sometimes I don't really. I'll go out on a limb about things. What gave me that stock to go out on that area and think about a thing was a little bit of faith here. It's I feel like we're good. I don't know the problem. I can't determine all the fear and anxiety away from it. I might find that answer is actually a fairly simple problem for me to get in there if I was actually hedging on those numbers for the thing, not being a terracotta army over here. Have to follow orders like that. On the stone mill floor, stonemason, you expect to do stonemason stuff at the time, not necessarily working the stock at that moment. And of course, working the stock. It could be a rock, it can be a person, and at certain times you have to remember that discrimination is what gives everything else the freedom of creating an emission of energy that would be calculable to that system. It's certainly capitable on. Oh, sunshine over there, we're moving in that direction. It'd be hard to put up the solar generators over there. If the physics wasn't right, or the metal traveling through the copper tube, or the magnet traveling through the copper tube here, time dilation. Sure, I mean, and it carries that. You can have conversations that have that kind of fallout, and that kind of megatonnage effect on certain things when you play around with the reality of stuff a little bit and say, well, I was looking for Torino scale aspects on this, and some science is going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Uh, we're just going to use that index later because this marketable idea works great in the stone mill. It's great for interviews and reports, analyzation, which is the SCC training from the stone mill, and those guys are pretty hardcore regulators. So I want you to just think about that number. Catch you on the next one.